So when we go to click on New Approver, the first thing, as I said, it came up with User. So if I were to select this button, you can definitely see that I'm pulling from User Info, and there's my users. So I'm going to select Josh as my approver here. And I can go ahead and I could add a second approver if I wanted. And now this time I'm going to select a customer. And you'll notice there was visually no difference when I switched between. A different form was displayed, but visually no change was detected in that embedded form because I used the exact same size of objects and also the same placement of objects. And so then when I go ahead and select, you'll notice that I am indeed selecting for my customers, and I can pull in, Curtis, for example, on this one. And so there you can see an example of where I have one of, oh, it's not displaying yet because it's not saved. I have one user and one customer that I am pulling in. Sorry, I had an extra little pop-up there. I apologize. I am not entirely, oh, there it goes. It just was taking some time. So there you can see that it did actually take those, from the system, and it popped them back into the approver, just like I had said on the before save. So it was really that simple to add a customer approver. And then, of course, because you have those links, you can actually send all of the appropriate emails to the appropriate people, and you can always manage those approvals coming back in over your email channels, over your email monitor. But you can also then extend this and let them approve in the portal, which we'll get back to here in a minute. So on the portal now, we want to set the customer fields to be requester name and ID. And I'm not sure if everyone understands that, that if you have new objects that you want to allow your portal users to see, you do need to make a couple little adjustments. So for example, in my approval, if I come down to my customer approval name and I edit it, you'll notice here it says that it holds a requester name. And if I look at the customer ID, you will also know that it says that it holds the requester ID. That enables me to allow the customer to come in and update their records, because anything that is has these customer, like for example me, if I were the customer, has Kim in there, and it's in these requester ID fields, that would enable me to update that record through the portal without that license. Okay, so as I said, the customer approver name would hold the requester name, and the customer approver ID holds the requester ID. And then I would create the forms for display for the portal. I would update the security. So when I, out of the box, approval is not an object which the user has the ability to view or edit for that matter. And then I would also add a dashboard that enables me to manage the security. And so from the portal perspective, this is kind of like what we have out there for the portal. And so if you go look at your approvals, it's going to ask you, well, how do you want to approve, deny, or abstain? And it has a little bit of information here. It says, hey, your approval is being requested for this incident. You may want to review. So you can have something like that, and then have them the ability for them to enter details, and you can also provide information to the security request down at the bottom so that they can actually see what they're approving. What I have also done for some of my clients is we also add a relationship from approval to the specifics of the ticket. So what you could also have here is you could have the details for the incident, and you could also have a tab for the specifics and allow the customer to not only see what the requests that they're managing, but also maybe what the details of that request were. that can be very important. So let's stop here and we'll go over and show. I'm sorry for bouncing around a little bit. It just makes it a little bit easier to see some of the things. So here's an out-of-the-box portal.
Hey, Kim, when you're ready to, I did get a few questions that came in, so let me know when it's a good time to address those.
Now is a perfect time. Let me just get signed in here first. There we go. I just had to remember what the password was. Okay, now's the perfect time.
Okay, so the first question I had came in a few minutes ago, and it was, are these approvals tied to a workflow, or can you just add at any status?
So if I understand the question correctly, can these approvals be attached to a workflow, or what I'm showing you, what I just showed you was approvals that were done manually. In other words, we actually went into the approval engine and we created a manual approver. And I'm also going to show a little bit later how to actually manage some of these automatically through a workflow as well. I'm not sure if I answered the entire question. If I haven't, please ask again.
Okay.
And you said you received another question?
Yeah, 2 minutes ago. The question was, I missed something. What is the scenario? What are we asking customers or users to approve?
Well, in almost every single time I go out to a client and we're working on service request for incident management, it's almost unconditional that a customer will want the manager of a particular person to approve an item. So if I'm not a user on the help desk, my manager is not a user on the help desk, but I'm requesting that I need a new computer, I'm requesting that I need a new headset for my phone or something like that. Well, in order to be able to have that expense, my manager is going to have to approve it. So it is an easy thing. I know who the manager is by going to my customer record and looking at the manager fields, but my manager would either A, have to be a user in the system, and remember, my customer record is pointing to his customer record. It's not pointing to his user record either. So it's a matter of where your manager and your user information, or your managers are not users, and that we need to pull that information for the ability for customers to approve rather than users. Because a lot of companies do not have every person that uses Cherwell defined as a user.
Okay. The next question I had was, you said approvals don't consume a license because the user is set in a field. Can you elaborate on how that is set up to not consume a license?
Well, that was, if we go back over here. Oops, excuse me, hang on a second. In order, the consumption of the license, basically you want the customer that is going to be approving to, for all intents and purposes, own that approval record. And so this is how we allow that customer to be the owner of that particular record. In the customer approver name field, we say at the bottom there on the general tab, holds requester name. And on the customer approval ID, we have it hold the requester ID. And when you do those holds, that will make the ownership current to that person who is in those fields. So if it were Laura, for example, she were the person who was approving on for me, these fields would have Laura Walker, and when Laura goes in there, she's the requester, or I mean, I'm sorry, she's the approver, and it says requester name and requester ID on that approval record. So therefore, she is the owner of that record, and then that's how she can go in and update.
Okay. I have a follow-on question that tied back to the first question we asked about approvals and workflow. So the question is, regarding my workflow question, are approvals just as easy to set up in restricting/enabling workflow? For example, if approvals are not in, then the ticket can't move to the next status. But once approvals are in, then the next status gets enabled.
Yes. And I may actually show a little bit of this a little bit later, and I'd like to hold that question, and then we can actually have some follow-on questions from there. I'll try and get back to this topic when I get to that.
Okay, I will try to flag that. And then another follow-on question from the same person. So the owner of the approval record is set to the customer ID and the ticket question.
That's correct.
So should we flag it? Okay. Okay. One more just popped in. How do these approvals work with change request approvals?
It would work entirely the same. Yeah, I mean, like if you used your customer approvals using the approval engine, you could continue to use that just the way you do today. If you want to use this kind of process to, have other people come in and approve, you can also do that as well. So we are not taking away anything of the out-of-the-box. The out-of-the-box works exactly the same way as it does today. We are extending the out-of-the-box to enable the ability for you to use other things like, different customers, different teams, and different workflows, as we'll get to in a minute.
Thank you, Kim. Great questions, everyone. Keep them coming.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, I think you can go back into it.
Okay, so, I was going to, let's go back over here. Okay, so we're signed in as Andrew. I added a dashboard here. So if I go to Portal Approvals, and this is just a plain dashboard. I just was putting this together for this demonstration. You'll notice that here Andrew has a ticket that's waiting for his approval. So you can come in here and click on it. And everyone who's used the portal knows that, every time you come in to browse in the ticket. And I didn't want to have to make my users click on edit and such, so I just went ahead and I just left it alone. And with the approve button will put the ticket into edit. It will approve the ticket. Now it's asking me for approval comments because I have approval I have approval comments being required. So it's asking for that. And then it will go ahead and approve it. And so now when we were to go back to approval, portal approvals, I think it goes back to the main menu after it's done here. Or not. You'll see that there are none waiting for his approval because he approved that ticket. So it was that easy to add just a plain customer approval that they could go to the portal, approve a ticket. So now let's go back to the presentation because there's a little bit more here. I've added a couple other things to show you what you can do. I added a module configuration dashboard for you to allow you to turn on and off approval components. And also because pre-existing tickets, you're not all new customers, you're all existing customers. So one thing that you would want to do is when we do this, you would want to set your users for all of your existing, you would want to set to user for all of your existing approvals, or to customer if you've already done some kind of customer approvals. And then you would want to set those user fields in the customer approval fields. When I built the update all pre-existing tickets, I built it from the perspective of somebody who just had out of the box. So we would want to modify that if you didn't have an out of the box, but you had some other variation. I also allowed to view the ticket details from the approvals. For example, when you saw down there I had the incident, you can also add the change request as a tab on the approval. And we talked about adding specifics. That's an easy thing to do. And then I'll go through, this is the workflow, the one step to initiate simple approvals. That's the workflow piece. And so we're going to step over here. I just wanted to walk through, actually, I'm going to continue, I'm sorry. I have some of these screens on my presentation also. So here's the approval configuration screen that I have. I'm betting that a lot of organizations out there don't use Abstain. Abstain is something that Cherwell provides out of the box, but very, very few organizations use Abstain. So you don't want to necessarily take away the out of the box, but a lot of people wind up then hiding it or whatever. So what I did here is I created an approval configuration dashboard, and then I have the ability to turn Abstain on and off. As you can see here, it's turned on. So I click on turn it off. Now watch what happens when I go into a new, I'm going to open a new window here so I don't have to keep going back to the dashboard. Okay, there we go. And so I'm going to go to approvals, create a new approval. Sorry, I'm trying to find my, I'll just make it full screen there. But you can see that I did no magic other than use that dashboard item, and it turned off the Abstain. And I can just as easily come back here. I can turn it on and come back if I refresh here. Sorry, hang on a second. I was doing some testing. So if I refresh here, you'll notice that the Abstain came back. It's just as easy as turning that on and off, and it's dynamic. Testing mode. Even when you're in production, maybe you're having an issue with somebody's approval or something like that, and you want to just for a second turn it on, turn testing mode on. You could do this and then have a check for your testing mode when you're building your expressions for your approvals, the emails. And then you could actually have it send out a special, choose a special address. You could have it send out with a special subject so that the email monitor, if it gets a special subject coming back, it knows how to handle it, and it could handle it with some sort of other criteria. And maybe testing mode turned on allows you to send some of your approvals to actual real people. That's another option too, so that you can use that both in development and in production to turn things, change the way it works. I also added the ability for you to require comments and require denial comments. Some people want to require those, some people don't. But as opposed to going in and making changes to Cherwell, you can come to a dashboard and turn those on or off. And then if I were to go and do another approval now, it would have actually not stopped and required me to enter those approval comments. It would have allowed the user or the customer just to go in and approve. And then, like I said, I added the update approvals here to go back and update the old records. And in this particular case, I've already run it, so there were no records to run against. The show approvals will just bring up all of the approvals. And that was just a quick way of just showing like what you could do from a dashboard for like an approval, someone who would be an approval administrator, for example. So now we get into this one step to manage the approval process. Christian, this might be part of your question that you had. So this is a workflow that we have attached to our service requests. And as you can see, we come in here and it's called create approvals for a service request. The very first thing I did is I created a field in my incident called task phase. And this allows me to manage things outside of my normal statuses for my ticket. So I could make this occur anywhere I want, and so it manages independently of my statuses, but I can update statuses along the way, as you'll see here in a second. So the very first thing is I update the approval phase, we call it task phase, to initial. And then that allows you to then start this process. This only occurs, there's an expression on this only happens when it is a new record, when the approval phase has not been initiated. And one other thing that it does is also sets a temporary field, temporary being not stored in the database field, to true to indicate that I have set this status at this time in this one step. So then it goes through, and here there is maybe some updates that occur when I am kicking off this approval phase. So I can have an update, I could have a one step, I could create another approval, I could do whatever I want here. This is really just a placeholder just to show you that you can do something like that. This action would only occur when the approval phase is initial and that temporary field had been set to true. So it won't occur the next time I run this one step. It won't. It will only occur when that changed to initial. Then we move forward, and here you can see that this update approval to request manager approval. This is updating that approval phase again to now ask for the manager approval. And it's only going to run when whatever conditions are going to end this initial phase. So that's why you have a expression here is that this indicates that initial has been set and the task phase was not set to true, or I'm sorry, the temporary approval phase was not set to true. So then what would happen is then it would advance. This one would pick up and make it request manager approval. And then here, because I set this to request manager approval, this runs when that is true, and it'll create that customer approval. After I have received, and that's this expression, after I've received my manager approval, it would then go update my incident or service request and update the status to the in progress. And always at the end of this one step, I always clear the temporary flag. And let me show you a little bit of that. I can show you here. Oh, no, I can't. Okay. Oh, wait. So this is just on one line rather than two. So here if we go in, you can see that we have an approval phase that we set to initial, and we have this temp approval phase set, and we set that to true. Then I don't have this step doing anything at the moment, but if we go look at the conditions for this step, you can see that it says only execute when the approval phase was set to initial and the approval phase has just been set to initial. So the next time through, it won't run that same step again. It won't ever run that step unless the task phase or the approval phase is newly set to initial again at some point. Then this would run. I'm not sure what I have as the action here. So here I have this one setting off when it's a service request because I don't have approvals for incident, and my approval phase is set to initial. And notice now I'm saying that my task approval phase set is not equal to true, meaning I am not going to give my manager on that first save. I'm only going to give it on the additional save after that. So now we can come in here, and this will actually update my incident. And it looks just like the last one, only this time it says manager approval, and it says temp approval phase set equal to true. And now, because it is set to true, I'm going to go ahead and create my approval for my customer. And here you can see that it's the manager approval, and that is equal to true. And again, that creates a child object for approvals. And there's the customer manager ID that's coming from whatever your requester was on your service ticket. Is coming from that particular manager. And so you'll notice I'm setting the approver selection type equal to customer, and then I am setting both the customer fields and the approver fields to make sure that all of them have the right name. So this is the workflow version of creating that manual approval that you saw us do just a little bit earlier. That's just a temporary pop-up in the middle there. Don't worry about that. And then after I have gotten my approvals, when my phase is equal to a manager, my temporary field is not equal to true, and my aggregate for all my approvals is equal to 0 for all of my waiting approvals. That means my approvals have been not waiting and not denied, are equal to 0. That means I've received my approvals, and now I can advance my actual status to the next step, to in progress. And you'll notice I have the approval phase is equal to complete now, and then my status is then set to in progress. And the last thing I do is I always, even though it's not stored in the database, I always clear the temporary flag at the end of this one step. That way, if you run the one step twice in the same, like if I save, I make a change, I save again, I would not get the same, it would not clear, temporary fields do not clear until you actually refresh. So if I didn't do that, there's a potential where you could come in there and twice in a row, and then it could run through the same thing twice because it still was equal to true. And clearing that flag enables you to not do that. Does anybody have any questions?
No, we have a comment that says cool, though, so that's good.
Great.
But no further questions.
I love to hear those words. That's great.
Yeah.
And by the way, this particular one step can be run countless number of times in succession, and it will only do the one little tiny piece of the the approvals or the workflow that you want to run. And I mean, so anybody who's worked with the one steps, you probably have a pretty good idea that you could use this to facilitate other things other than just approvals. And this process works really super well in order to manage little chunks of workflow in a single one step. And I mean, that's really the biggest thing of that. So that's basically it. I mean, that is the approvals. And anybody have any questions?
I don't see any questions, so if that concludes your presentation, at this point, we'll move into any other questions you have for Kim, not related to approval, things you've been stumped on, things you'd like to see, also questions you have for everyone else. Feel free to put those in the
Laura?
questions pane. And one thing I would like to do, if you're not speaking, I'm going to keep everyone on mute just because of background noise issues. So if you have a question for the group or a comment and answer to share, I'd like you to use the raise your hand feature, and we will go ahead and unmute you when you have a question or something to add. Yes, Kim.
I would like to add that that workflow that you see there, this is the out-of-the-box incident subcategory. But we often, every time that we go out, we don't use the out-of-the-box incident subcategory. And as well as I'm sure most of you do not, we have a lot of other extensions in here and little, things that you can call out. So if you have a workflow that you want to set off for all of your service requests, you could put that workflow in here and then have it execute that single one step every time you save the record. And then it would actually pick up and be able to do that piece every time you save the record for the current, where it happens to be in the process. So I just wanted to show how you might initiate that workflow for like some subcategory items and not others.
Okay, great. Was that going back to address the workflow question that we had earlier on?
Well, I had already addressed the workflow question, but I had already addressed it when we were going through the one step. But this would enable you to have a trigger to, a trigger to then be able to call that workflow.
Okay, so I will flag that question as covered. We did have another one that just came in. The question is, will the map be available on the Cherwell community site?
When it's completely done, yes, it will be. It is, there's still things that are being added to it, but everything that you see today is already there, and it's just a matter of putting the map together. So yes, it will be available. If you would like it in advance of when it is available on the community site, you can contact Laura, and Laura will make sure you're one of the first people to get it.
All right. So with that, let's open it up to other questions. Again, please use that raise your hand feature, and we will we'll open up for questions. All right, Christian, I see your hand. Yes, I'm not sure if that's from a previous question, but I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. So if you have any additional questions, the floor is yours. You are now unmuted. And Christian, if you do have any questions, we've unmuted you, but I can't hear you, so it's possible if you are trying to speak, you may be on mute on your end. Okay, so I'm not hearing anything. I'm going to go ahead and put him back on mute and assume that the hand is still up from a previous question. Other questions anyone has, either for Kim or the audience, on any topic you'd like to cover? We've got a whole hour free ahead, so this is your chance to stump the expert, throw out your hardest question, or get a little free training on something you'd like to see. Not seeing anything yet, so why don't we go ahead and leave it open for about 1 more minute. And if no one has any further questions, then that'll conclude our practitioner call. We'll be scheduling for the next month somewhere in the middle of April, probably the week of the teens. It seems to be working well. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, we hope you'll join us for the next one. We're also looking for topics for future events. So if there's pressing topics, pop them in the chat or questions pane here, or email
Laura,
them my way. Yes.
I see a couple hands.
I see him too now. All right, we are going to start with Harold. Harold, I am unmuting you at the moment. All right, Harold, can you hear us, and can we hear you?
Yes. Just one
Hello.
question. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
Go ahead.
we can hear you.
Okay. One question. I'm currently have a Jira set up with the MAP, the version 1.5 that's out there in Cherwell. But my question relies on the communication that comes from Jira back into Cherwell. So if there's a status change in Jira that's tied to that incident in Cherwell, or there's a comment that's added in Jira that's tied to that incident in Cherwell, trying to figure out if anyone is using Jira and how they're getting that communication from Jira back into Cherwell, where it just creates just a note in the journal entry.
While we're waiting, in case anybody would like to respond, I have not used the map that you're using right now, so I'm not exactly sure how Cherwell is doing that communication. But I can tell you that we can manage that. We have managed some communication in an old version to Jira back and forth using email, so I know that that's a possibility as well. And well, of course, the email monitor coming back can identify, well, this is a note or something like that, and then create a subticket. I would assume through web services, and I think that that's what they're using for Jira now, you could do something the same and have some sort of an identifier or a flag, and then create a different type of ticket. I'd have to take a look at that because I am not familiar with the way the map is doing it.
Okay, and yes, it's using the web service call, yes.
My expectation would be that you could have some sort of flag that would identify the type of event that was coming in, and similarly to like the email monitor, create a note ticket.
Okay.
You definitely have people that could probably help you with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I believe JC has his hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and mute Harold again, and I'm going to open up the lines. JC, your line is open if you'd like to talk to him.
Hey, thanks. Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
You can.
All right, perfect. So I have an issue, and I've had the same issue for a long time and have not got an answer from anyone, including Cherwell. But maybe you guys have dealt with this. So within a ticket of Cherwell, when you are searching for knowledge to attach to that ticket, that search sorts by ID number and not by relevance. And there's no way to change that. And I've come to terms with that. Cherwell knows this. They're trying to fix it at some point. I don't know when they're going to fix it. But have you seen an alternative solution? We created one, but the way that we created it, Cherwell's basically said that we found a bug in the system and that they're going to close that soon. And we did it using the linking directly to CSM objects, where we can open up a new window with the search, but that search and passing that command is something that they're saying isn't going to be open much longer. So have you had any, I guess one, have you noticed that it sorts by ID, and two, do you have any suggestions for alternatives?
I see Chris Crum raised their hand, and I just want to make sure that they don't have an answer to this before I give my answer. Laura, can you unmute so that we can ask?
Yeah, this is Chris. No, I do not have an answer to that.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, so you hold your hand. Well, I'll be right back to you. So anyway, what I would suggest, and this would obviously be something that you could put in place until such time as Cherwell fixes the problem, but have you tried reorganizing your knowledge so that the indexes sort in the order that you want to bring the knowledge back?
You can't change any part of the sort, though. Like, you would have to change the ID number of every knowledge article, and you don't know what people are going to search on, because it's the only index that it's pulling. It's just that ID number. There's not a way to change that
it's
from
not pulling.
that.
It's not pulling the primary key then. The hold on. Like, so for example, when we do the knowledge, I'm just looking at approval here because I just happen to be here. So if I go into the database, your clustered approval, your clustered index, because you can add additional fields. So I could have approval ID would not have to be my first one. I could have like title, something, 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 approval ID. And that would be my clustered index. A clustered index means that that's the order that it will be stored in the database and retrieved.
I have not tried that. No one has told me about that. So I will try that.
I would try that first. And now, okay, there is one additional thing, because like when you're pulling back your knowledge, sorry, knowledge is not something, I don't update this every day, so I have to. I think that they made that a separate. Here it is. This is what I wanted. Okay, so when I'm pulling back my knowledge and articles.
Yeah, I've messed with all of these settings. I've had Cherwell on the phone with all of these settings, and none of them are.
Well, normally there is like a, not here, but there's like a show by, and like title ID or, ID or something, or show by, and I'm not in the right place at the moment. But what you can do also, and this is another kind of like, I would call it a stupid human trick, going back to like late night shows.
Well, there is the sort option for every other search except for this one.
Well, let's say I wanted to go and have my sort, for example, right? So I could create a sort field and make it like 255. Make it a calculated field. This is almost the same as the other one too, where you're doing the clustered, except that when I make the calculated field, I can then say I want article type followed by, I'm picking things at random here, so just,
yep.
Obviously this is not what you want to do, but service and whatever, and then of course your article ID, your knowledge article ID would be the last thing. So I've just created a bunch of things there. And by the way, obviously your types are not all going to be the same size. Well, I could actually create like a padding kind of thing so that I could come in here with modifiers and I could modify each one of those. And it's confused because I didn't put any spaces in between these.
Sure.
Hold on a second. So if I come into modifiers, oh, I have to add one. I forgot that's something new that's in 9 that they don't give you one off the bat. I could then make these a certain size. So I could pad right, for example, or I could, pad left, and I could, maybe I only want to pull the first 10. I know that everybody has at least 10 characters, so I only want to pull the first 10 characters of each one of those. So here I would use substring, and I would say till 10. And then I pull those first 10 characters in each one of those sets of information. I'm just trying to show you how you could put something together that would create the semblance of a sort field that, where each segment has the equal number of weighting.
Sure. So once you create this expression in the sort field, what would you do from there to actually get that sort to occur?
Well, for example, like if I'm in if I'm doing like a search results list here for knowledge, normally, and well, let's pull criteria here. Knowledge.
But I guess so. This is going off of a different search though than what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, so here, yeah, I understand where you're going. So let me go back there, and I apologize. Let me go into my incident. This is what you're talking about over here. Yep. And so I'm thinking that the clustered index would help you the most, because I'm thinking that if you actually have that I'm trying to think of something to search on. So here, I'm really thinking that if you have that clustered index, that would probably save you in, because you don't want these returned in this order. You want them returned in, like, for example, your priority order.
Yeah, no, usage probably.
Yeah, usage. That's kind of like, and so usage would be the first thing that you would have in that clustered index. What I have successfully done in the past too, and this doesn't help you in inside your record when you're using knowledge, but I have actually used read fields too to help, like when you go in and you were browsing knowledge from the portal, for example, and when you browse that knowledge, it would actually add to a read counter. So even if you didn't use that knowledge, it actually added to a read counter, and then I had a dashboard which then also prioritized, if they went to view knowledge, it would prioritize those based on that read counter. So you could see which ones people are looking at.
Sure, makes sense. We would have to do something a little bit different, but we could do something. We don't actually use the portal. We pull all our knowledge articles out, all our service catalog items out through the REST API, and basically embed them within our regular web pages so that we're not redirecting customers to a different portal page. They see it right within our regular web pages. But that's definitely something that I'll keep in mind that we should be able to still use with that through the REST API.
And I mean, I would, certainly, if you want to, you could also reach out to us and see what we could do for you, how we could help you.
Sure, thanks.
You're welcome. I think Chris was next, Laura.
Yes, I left Chris unmuted, so Chris, you should be able to speak up.
Yes, thank you. I just have a question about the approval request. When you're going into a approval request, I think you were going to share some additional details, like incident, how you attach that details to the approval.
How I attach the approvals to the detail.
Yeah, how you include additional details to the approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I can easily show you that. I haven't actually, I did not do that for this presentation, but that would be an easy, quick thing for us to publish here. So approvals, as you know, is a supporting object. And supporting objects are typically the targets of relationships, not the owner of relationships. So if I were to come in here right now and look at the relationships, it's an owned by. But you'll notice, well, in this particular case, it doesn't have to be anything. But if I were to go and look at the specifics isn't going to be the owner of the approval. Approval really needs to be, in that particular case, the owner of the specific relationship. So what we're going to do is the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our business object. and escalate it to a major business object. This is temporary. So we go in and we change it to a major, we click OK, we apply our change and go back home. And now you'll notice that approval is listed as a major. So now we're going to go in and we're going to add our relationship. So we come in, and you'll notice I was very clear. I said it's linking to the specific on the incident. So it's not it's like a step parent almost, and it's a one-to-one. So we're going to come down here, and the target of the relationship is still specifics. And here in the link section, we're going to set up a custom link. And when we do that, in the in the specifics record, we know who the parent ID is. So we're going to go and pick why can't I find it? Type name. Oh, for the love of God. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to leave here for just a second because I'm going to go back to my incident relationship and find out where, oh, that's because it doesn't exist. All right, that's why I couldn't find it. In the specifics, you store the, see, I go and add this automatically, so I don't even think about it. In the specifics, what happens is that the specifics ID gets stored in the parent. So the very first thing that I want to do is I also want to copy that incident ID into the actual specifics. So I'm going to edit the group. And I'm going to put the, oh, it was right there. That, I don't know why I couldn't find it. All right, let's try and go back. Obviously, I called it the same thing, so we're going to get rid of this here. Let's go back and create our relationship again. It's right there. So here's the parent rec ID. So the parent rec ID is the ID of the incident that this specific is related to. And so we're going to link that to our approval record. And we have, similarly, we have the parent rec ID here as well. So we're going to go and link those two record IDs together. So this approval rec ID, the parent, is just like we were if we were linking it to the incident ID, and the specifics parent ID is also related to the incident parent ID. So the two things, when put together, create the relationship. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we're going to go over to our grid, form arrangement. And then we're just going to go ahead up here and drag this down onto, and we need to change it. Okay, so it does have the default form, so it should all be okay when there is a relationship. Right now there's nothing there, so that's why nothing shows up. The last step of this whole process, remember we escalated this to a major business object. We have to go back into the business object properties and now make it a supporting business object. And we're going to go ahead and publish. And now if we go look at our approvals, we have both our incident and we also have the specifics that came along with it. It was that easy. It took me a lot longer to find the field than it did to actually do the work. Anybody else? I think that Don Fuller has some questions for her.
That's right. Don's had his hand up for quite a while, so I'm going to go ahead and re-mute Chris just in case of background noise. And Don, you are now unmuted and you may speak if you're still there.
I'm still here. Thank you. I'm hoping
Right.
with this question. This is a question. I have a number of specifics forms on my portal for ordering like software and hardware. And I have some extra fields that have conditional visibility. For just an example, if on one of my software forms, if they select an application such as like Salesforce, it'll make another field appear and ask for further information, and I'll have like a drop down to pick roles or services that are related to that selection. How can I make that extra visibility field be required if it's only visible if they've picked Salesforce? Like I need a conditional requirement for it.
Well, that's easy.
Perfect. Awesome.
No, it's actually super easy. So if I come in here to, I'm just going into it. These are all out of the box. So maybe if the connection type, how about like connected to the internet? If it's connected to the internet, then connection type is going to be required. So I was just checking to make sure I knew what field it was. If I come in here and edit my connection type, and I go to properties and I go to required, you notice I have a required for save, but I have a little arrow here. If I expand the arrow, I can actually have it always required for save, never required for save based on a field. I can also have it based on an expression. And by the way, I could have done this based on a field too because it happens to be a true-false field. But I can come over here and I can create a custom expression or a stored expression. And so for example, if I were to come in, I can say connected to the internet is equal to true. And then it will be required based on that. One additional thing is because everybody likes their required fields to be outlined in red. I do not. There's only one exception to that, and that's where I can't do it. With related item pickers, they don't have a specific field that is their focus. Every other field has the field that it is related to, for example. So I create a single thing here for that. I'll go in for border color and use expression. And this is a new database, so I haven't created this expression, so you and I'll do it together. I store the expression, and you'll notice I'm in none. And that's where I want to be. I don't want any focus whatsoever. And I know that's got some people already jumping around. And I'm just going to say required fields. Now here's the magic. So I come in here and I'm going to say if my associated field value is empty. Oops. Then I'm going to come down here in my theme and say required field color. And then otherwise, I'm going to pick my normal border color. So here, when I apply this, you'll notice that I got it the red border because my associated field value for connection type is not filled in right now. And now that's if you always want it on when it's available. Okay, let's see, I don't always want it on when I only want it on when the connected to the internet is equal to true. I could then come in and manage it automatic or with an expression here, and I could say if connected to the internet is equal to true, then make it required, otherwise make it not required. Does that answer all of your questions?
So that was so painfully easy, I don't know why I didn't see that before. I have a slightly related question.
Sure.
It might be in that same menu. Can you have a field be required on the portal default side, but not on the default? So like if we have a
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay.
Yes, and that's a fabulous question, and you can absolutely have a field that is required on one side and not on the other. So, for example, you have your view here. Every time I create a new view, I'll get a new, and what I'm going to do that right now is I'm going to create and there's a couple different ways you can do it, and I'll show you both ways. So my custom view, I'm going to make this a portal view, by the way. So browser, and then I'm going to click for portal. So the focus of it is there. You notice that right now email is not added to this view. So I get exactly what is in default. That's where I start. If I go to add to view, I can create a business object that has empty forms and grids, so meaning I can create my forms all from scratch if I want. I can copy the forms and the grids from an existing view. So I can copy them from default. And if there was one for the portal default, it would show up here as well. When I can choose to only copy the default forms and grids. So I'll just copy it, go ahead and copy. What it did is it took the email business object with all of its current rules and all of its current other things and copied it to my custom view. I can go in and edit and maybe the connection type field. And for the portal, I always want them to select this. So instead of it being based on an expression, I can always require it for save. I'm making things up here. And so now you can see that it definitely was required for save. We marked it as such. If I go back to my default view and I go look at that same field again, it still has my expression. So I can have any different number of views. I can have different variations. I'm going to tell you one place where that is extremely effective, or important and effective. Many of you probably have interfaces. And interfaces present a whole lot of different types of challenges because a lot of times, like, data might sneak in through the interface that is not valid or not available or whatever. And so what you can do is you can create an interface view and change all the rules. You remove all the rules that your client would have to do. You can remove all those rules so that your interface can get by a lot of those validation rules, get the data in, and then you can actually tweak it once it's into Cherwell. And I also said that I would show you a second way you could do it. In the default view, or any view that you have, for example, when I was building this out, I can also say that I want it to be required if, and I come down here to my system functions, is in browser portal is equal to true. So that is a second way of you validating from that one single view whether it's in the portal or not, requiring whether it's in the portal.
All right, that's perfect.
Fantastic. Laura, I
Thank
think
you.
there's a couple other questions that came in on the chat.
Yes, we had one come in. The question is, what was the relationship again between the approval and specific one-to-one?
Yes, it is a one-to-one relationship. There is only ever one specific to one incident. So it's going to be the same kind of thing for that approval relationship as well. I'll go back there. And by the way, even though I've demoted approval back to a supporting object, I can still now view that relationship that I created. So here is approval links to the specifics on the incident. It is a one-to-one relationship. And I could have actually done a links or an owns there. The important thing is that approval was the parent in that relationship, not the child. An owned by indicates that approval is the child of a relationship. A link, an owns or a links indicates that it's a parent or at least a sibling. Any more questions?
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised or questions submitted yet. So this is your last chance. If you have any other pressing issues, questions for Kim, training topics, send them in now. We'll leave the lines open for about 60 seconds while we wait for people to have the opportunity to put in those questions or raise those hands.
Has this been useful to everyone?
Feel free to chat a
Maybe
yes in either chat or questions. If this is useful, that would be great to know.
fantastic.
Looks like we're getting some positive comments, so it sounds good.
Well, if there's
Okay.
anything that you think of after the fact that you haven't thought of during this call, feel free to give us a ring or let us know, and you can get to me through Laura, and then we'd be able to give you some more information.
Great. Well, I think that'll be a wrap for today, so I'll go ahead and conclude it. Feel free to watch for your emails for our next invitation coming. We'll set the date sometime in the next few days here for our April event. I'll get that out to you as soon as possible. I'd like to thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the week, everyone. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.